Hi, Adam Chau. I'm very glad you are speaking with me about the e-ceramics exhibition. Adam, we just spoke some minutes ago about your definition. Are you an artist or ceramic artist? What do you think? How you describe yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think that I use all labels, as in artist, designer, craftsman. And I do think it's important to note that I went to school both for fine art and then I went to graduate school for industrial design.
Hmm.
And when I went to school for design, there was this kind of school of thought that art, design, and craft is a nexus, meaning that they're all interconnected with each other. You're never only a designer and you're never only an artist. And with craft, anything that's made by humans is designed. You know, you can have a nice craft to it. It is crafted, but it's also designed. There's intent to it. So I actually think that we're everything. Even if you consider yourself solely a designer, there is, if you're making objects, they do need to be crafted, and there's artistic expression into it. There's intent. So even if your intent is to have no intent, that's still intent, you know?
Sure.
So I take all of the labels. I've never really exclusively used one.
Your answer is proposing more and more in between the fields. So can you speak about your work a little, and then we speak more about the ceramics exhibition?
Of course. So my work really started in graduate school looking at how objects made in industry were quote unquote perfect, where tolerances had tight tolerances, basically, which translates to if you make, say, a cup, you make 100 cups that are supposed to be all the same. What's the difference between it? Can it be a little off? What is the difference from cup 1 and cup 50 and a cup 100? Are they all the same? Do they have to be the same height? Do they have to be the same width? And I really explored how to use industry in a creative way where there was more hand into the objects and where there was more expression, and kind of making those tolerances bigger. So I started carving into clay, and then after I graduated, I started painting into clay. And I really wanted to look at digital technology and why we were trying to think that it was so perfect, and trying to kind of make it a little bit more expressive and reflect kind of how we're messy as humans. And I've slowly over time incorporated digital culture as well. So not only digital technology, but, you know, I'm not embarrassed to say that I'm a millennial. You know, I am of a certain generation. I was born in the late 80s, and I did grow up with screen technology when I was, entering college. That's when I got my first phone. And all of a sudden that opened up a world to me. And I think it opened up a world for everyone. And our communications patterns changed. I think we began to text, we began to use the internet in really creative ways. So my work really involves how digital technology and digital culture is changing how we communicate.
I think you are the only artist that doesn't work mainly
exactly.
in 3D printing, and it's really interesting to see how you choose your technique according to what you want to do and say.
Yeah, so I love digital technology, but my kind of machine of interest is a CNC machine, and it's not a 3D printer. I really like CNC machines because, again, talking about how we can kind of hack the machine or hack the system, this is kind of what I came out of school with. And I'm going to take down the audio. This is what I started to do. I put handmade brushes on a CNC machine, which basically is a robotic arm that goes left and right, up and down, side to side. And right now you can see it's dipping into a material, which is cobalt, which produces blue and white porcelain objects. So I program it to draw something, and you'll see in a moment right here that it's painting a selfie. And I think it's really funny that, self-portraiture has been around for thousands of years, yet selfies seems like this new thing for millennial culture, but it's not true. Like self-portraiture has been going on for years and years and years. We're just doing it on a different media type.
Yeah, it's actually a very interesting interpretation to self-portrait or portrait.
Yeah, so you can see here, this is one, and then you can see here, this is the same movements over and over because the machine is doing it. Yet I'm getting really different results every single time. Sometimes the brush doesn't even touch the tile. Sometimes it just creates a blob. And you can see down here, these are other objects that I've created that look at selfie culture and how people kind of, it's really interesting, especially something like this, where you're creating a selfie, but you're covering your face. You're becoming anonymous. So how interesting is it that you want to express yourself and you want to show yourself to the world, yet you're covering your face with the phone? And I'm so interested in this paradox, this how we're trying to reach out to people and share with people, yet we're holding back at the same time. We're creating a mask.
Yeah. Actually, it's the first time that you do something with 3D printing, because I thought you had a little experience with that.
So I do 3D print a tiny bit. I don't think I have anything in my portfolio that I can show. I did curate a show called Reinvented that did have a lot of 3D printing in it. So I am talking with artists all the time about technology and 3D printing. And also people that use 3D printing as just one small component of creating a larger piece. This, for example, was Sean Spangler and Brian C. Bez, where the base is printed, but other parts are hand-thrown. So this also is a very creative way to these pieces. Some of these pieces were 3D printed. Some of them were 3D printed in plastic and then slip cast. So I'm really interested in how I was explaining in my own work, like hacking the system. I'm really interested in objects that are coming off of machinery that don't look like it came off of a machine. I'm interested in objects that kind of, straddle both worlds where you can't really tell, was it machine made? Was it not machine made? This was made by Katie Bunnell, and it's made out of Parian. She lives in the UK. I love it where it gives a little hint where you see a Macintosh computer right here. Yeah,
I think nowadays that we have a new relationship with, maybe we talk about the e-ceramics exhibition. So first, how did you felt when I sent you the mail and said, will you send us a file and we will produce your work? How you felt about persons that also crafting his own work?
I think it was, I've been waiting for an opportunity like this because I think this is what people, at least when I went to school 10 years ago, people were saying about technology, like, oh, you can send a file across the world and have something printed and you can communicate with other people in such an interesting way and ideate and have new innovations. So I was terribly excited because I don't have a printer at home. I have a CNC machine at home, but having access to a printer and kind of collaborating with someone that really understood that technology, it's exciting to me because I know how to work certain machinery. And it would probably take me a year to, understand how to 3D print. So having the opportunity to work with someone that had that expertise already just kind of expedites the ideas.
So maybe now I share my screen with your work and you explain a little about it. Okay?
Sure. Lovely.
Okay.
Thank
you.
So
can you tell us about the concept of the work when you planned it? Did you thought about the way that someone else very far will produce it? Does the distance made any kind of new look about your work?
So from the beginning, I wanted to start with a concept, but I knew that the finished object could change. in a way. So I allowed myself that flexibility to not just want one concrete thing. I knew I wanted to express an idea, and we can go about that in a bit, but I knew that I shouldn't be beholden to a certain look right from the beginning, that my design that I created had to be, there was only one way it should look. I knew when you're working with someone else in a collaborative way with a machine that you've never used, you know, you have to trust, there's a bit of trust. And if they need to make decisions that you wouldn't necessarily make, but they know better because it's their machine and they've been using it more. So I think that I wanted to communicate the idea, but the end result, the aesthetics of it, the actual aesthetics that you'll see in the kind of the bigger piece, the striations of the blue, that was collaborative. That wasn't, I didn't think of that at the get-go. So what you're looking at right now on the right-hand side are speech bubbles. And I knew I wanted to work with something that involved history, because I find when you're communicating with new technology, it's really good to kind of thread the needle with a little bit of history and a little bit of like an archetype or something that people are familiar with so they can enter the piece and then understand it more. So I kind of wanted to work with, it's a little bit of, I guess it's not a joke, but I thought it would be interesting to reinterpret a piece that was reinterpreting another piece. So I was really fascinated with an artist whose name was Howard Kotler, who made a bunch of decal-based work on ready-made plates, bowls, slipcast work that already existed. And he would chop up decals to make commentary. And he made a certain plate series that was a commentary off of Gertrude Stein's poem. I believe it's called For Emily or After Emily or With Emily, where she says, a rose is a rose is a rose. And in readings of this, Stein sometimes went on to say, is a rose, is a rose, is a rose, as kind of a performance. And Howard Kotler was making a commentary on how, you know, a thing can be a thing, which is the thing. He was saying, no, actually, with I think I'm saying it, semiotics, he was saying sometimes a rose is a rose, but other times in certain communities, a rose isn't a rose. A rose bud can be a replacement and a symbol for something else. So when you're a minority, and Howard Kotler was gay in the 70s, he was closeted and working in academia, he had to code his objects, which means he had to create symbols or use symbols in his own community to express, to have artistic expression, where other people wouldn't be able to interpret those symbols. So I was really inspired by that, because we use symbols every day, and we actually perhaps use it without realizing it. And the symbol is an emoji. An emoji is a stand-in for something else, for a word or a concept. It's not always, you know, I can't think of an emoji, like a balloon emoji or a teddy bear emoji. You know, those symbols have power to it. And I really wanted to get across that we are still using symbols, and emojis are our new language. It's a new way of communicating. And I find it super interesting because it's visual, right? It's not using the alphabet. It's not spelling something out. It's kind of almost left to interpretation. So what I did is I used a rose is a rose is a rose, which Howard Kotler did a rose with an open rose, kind of an aerial view. And what I did is I did a rose emoji, as well as I think it's a cherry blossom emoji. So it's a riff off of Howard Kotler's piece, which was an interpretation of Gertrude Stein.
Thank you for the explanation. I think also from our side, you send us emojis, and then suddenly they are made from ceramics, because you actually did send us emojis. We interpreted them in our way, and I think it's really interesting to raise the points that different communities have different language, different visual language, and also the gay community use it, but also in the States versus Israel versus what we say one to another with these emojis. And now they are made from ceramics, so they getting a new layer of interpretation. And also I must say that it was not easy at all to print this object because of the flat surface above it. And actually, I don't know if you know that we printed upside down.
Yeah, I was thinking, during this time, I really was thinking, and it's me leaving it up to the expert, but I had no clue how you would create this. So I'm terribly excited that you worked really hard to bring it into reality, because I don't think I would even know how to create this, not using a 3D printer. I don't even know where I would start with it. And to the interpretation of, yes, a rose to me means something very different to someone from a different community. Mm-hmm. A perfect example is when I met my husband. My husband is Dutch. He lived in Amsterdam. And when I saw him for the first time in his homeland in Amsterdam, he gave me a tulip. So in the States, I would give a rose, but in Holland, you would give a tulip. And I think that's a great example also about interpretation and customs. Mm-hmm. And I'm so interested in that, and how we can see one thing and it might mean another thing. So yeah.
Yeah. So can you speak a little about the communication with Michal Levitsky? She was actually it's a collaboration between her, Michal, and her dad. I don't know if you I don't know if you know. And they both worked together to print your work. And about working in the first time with someone that you don't know, even the language is different, the concepts are different, the technology is different. How you felt about the process?
I liked it. I actually equate it to working in China with industry, because when you're working in industry, you rely on so many people to help you execute your work. Again, I've been saying it all along, the expertise, and knowing that I don't understand the machines, and it would take me such a long time. So there is so much trust in getting the idea across.
The main goal or concept of the exhibition is to look about the boundaries and how we can expand them, and how we can think about new concepts of what we usually do. For example, the way she wanted to put the blue in your work, because I showed her what you are doing, and I think she spoke with you a little about it, putting the cobalt in the clay and using it as part of the print. I think it was kind of her interpretation, and again, it's really putting in the work new values that maybe I'm not sure that it was what you were deciding about the work.
It wasn't, but I think it was so successful. So for example, I can say, that's again, knowing at the beginning to be flexible and saying, well, my palette is blue and white. So maybe incorporating blue, but not being so restrictive on where to put the blue, what shade of blue, what, I think that would have been boring. That's not collaborative.
Thank you very much, Adam.
Yeah, thanks so much.